Every gambler knows that the secret to surviving,
I don't wanna take advice from fools.
You always won every time you placed a bet.
Money, that's what I want.
Joe Duffy, CEO of OffshoreInsiders.com. College basketball. We've gone back to basics, and it's paid off for me, and it's paid off for you. We went over years and years of our picks and analysis. We keep pretty assiduous records, and I wanted to find out if there was any obvious patterns on when I did extremely well, often hitting in the upper 60% over like a month or two period, sometimes hitting in the 70 percentile, and compare that to when we didn't do quite as well, when we would just barely hover above the 50% mark. We went over every single solitary sport and eventually came up with a pretty obvious conclusion. I did my best when I stuck to the basics, and I did not allow for modern technology to override time-proven techniques. So in other words, there were times when I was in a slump, I went and saw my notes, plays that I would scratch off or cancel as a result of, for example, a great system play, even sharp versus square. Power ratings, they were usually, in too many cases, games that would hit 55, 56, 57%, but became no plays because I had technology cancel it out. And I finally went back after the audit, and it was very clear. In order to raise my winning percentage and to get it back where it was above 60% on a consistent basis, it was very simple. That technology would be used to corroborate plays, never to cancel it out. And quite frankly, and there I go, remember, I've made my confessions that I do tend to itch a lot. This shirt, but hey, that's all right. We'll give you winning information and maybe give you an unintentional laugh, as you can count how many times I have to scratch myself. Too much information, but such is life. Now, examples of going back to basics really stood out in college basketball, such as some of the time-proven techniques. Spot situations. For example, non-conference play early in the year, especially when it comes to smaller conference teams, they would often play in very difficult travel situations. It wouldn't be that uncommon for a team to be playing 4 games in 7 days. We had University of Oakland. Now, this is something that if you're watching this in 2016, 2020, evergreen stuff will almost definitely still apply, just like it applied in 1995. 1990, etc., but I'll use some contemporary references. In 2012, 2013, Oakland played one of the most ridiculous schedules ever. They played on the road 15 of the first 19 games, traveling nearly 17,000 miles. Not surprisingly, in the middle of that brutal travel schedule, we faded them. They were a bad spread team, but what happened? The quote-unquote baptism by fire, plus their poor record had to be taken into its proper perspective. They played a brutal schedule, and even the strength of schedules out there, like Massey Ratings is a great strength of schedule. StatFox is a pretty good one. What they do not take into consideration is when teams are playing a bunch of games in a short period. What they take is the cumulative power ratings of all their opponents and come up with a pretty good one. But the truth is, Oakland played as brutal of a schedule as I've ever seen. But once they returned to a quote-unquote normal schedule, especially started playing some home games, what did we do? We started riding them because their power ratings were deceptively low because it wasn't taken into consideration all they had to go through. Plus, like I said, the old baptism by fire, they were a much better team and improved as the year went on. Now, as you know, we'll happily give shout-outs to sites we're not affiliated with. TeamRankings.com probably has the best travel analysis section. Injuries. Obviously injuries, but not just this player is minus, or this team is minus a certain player, but when it comes to injuries, general rule of thumb, NBA really applies in the NBA, but also in college basketball. If a team loses a star player for, say, 5, 6, or more games, the first game they can rally around adversity, especially if a team is playing poorly. Then they've got something to rally around, and they will, and then, you know, their opponent will quite often have a false sense of security, and a team often covers their first game without a star player, but it reaches the point of diminishing return. Each and every game minus the star player, a team winds up getting hurt even more and more. KenPom.com, very good where they have individual power ratings, and there's the equivalent guy on the ESPN, Insider Hollinger, has pretty good individual power ratings if you want to see how valuable a player is to a team when they lose him. But most importantly, you got to handicap when a player comes back. When a player comes back, if a team is actually playing pretty well without him, often there is one step back before there's a couple steps forward. But when a team is playing very poorly, he will give an instant boost. But you have to monitor, is his play going to be limited? And often it's not until 2, 3, 4 games back that a team truly becomes a great play once they get this key player back into the lineup. The obvious sandwich games. Look, again, I'll give you a timely reference. One of the all-time great sandwich games that we had seen in quite some time was just the other night when Boston College was playing Duke. They were hosting Duke, and Duke was playing in between North Carolina State and North Carolina. Now, North Carolina, of course, is the biggest rivalry. In fact, Duke and North Carolina probably the biggest rivalry in all of college basketball. But more importantly than that, NC State was having one of their best years. They beat Duke early in the year, so it was such a huge revenge game. But look-ahead games, letdown games, and a sandwich game, which combines both. Another time-proven technique. Experience. College basketball teams' general rule of thumb, more talent they have coming back, they're going to start out well spread-wise, but there's kind of a bell curve. They reach a tipping point, and then they start to become a fade. Conversely, young teams, rebuilt teams, will start out sluggishly spread-wise, but they're the ones that most rapidly improve throughout the year just as their power ratings go down. So there are certain teams that will fade early and then ride late, and certain teams that will ride early and fade late. Again, statsheet.com has what they call an experience tracker. Pretty good there. You got to scratch the surface because it's based purely on minutes played, not on how good the players are coming back, but it is a great starting point and a great cheat sheet. So all in all, the bottom line is time-proven techniques where technology really is exploited as every team becomes the home team. Way back in the day, before the internet, but when fax machines first came out, we had people all across the country. Some of them were in the business that we were, and we would just trade fax information. You get stuff out of your local newspaper, send it to me. In fact, because I was doing it for my handicapping business, there was some fantasy baseball site that wound up in the early days of the internet, wanted people to fax information to them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now the internet makes every team the local team, so you could be in Atlanta, Georgia, just like me, and dominate Big West basketball, as we've done. And some of the conferences that, quite frankly, I struggle to match them up. The Sun Belt Conference with this team and that team, but you can get virtually every basketball team out there, their SID releases, which are gold mines for information, you can get them on the internet as well. So that's where technology really helps us most, is it makes the world smaller. But my biggest lesson, what I've really learned, and as a valuable lesson that has really exacerbated over the last few months since we did our audit, is most importantly, don't let modern technology override time-proven techniques. If it's not broken, don't fix it. It should only be used to corroborate. Well, again, for our winning picks, visit offshoreinsiders.com each and every day, www.offshoreinsiders.com, www.offshoreinsiders.com. I'm Joe Duffy, anchor of offshoreinsiders.com.